Hi, I'm Professor Winans, and I teach in the biology department at Towson University. And I'm standing here in front of Marley Creek, and Marley Creek flows eventually into the Chesapeake Bay. And before I talk to you about the water quality here in this creek and other creeks, I want to show you. If you look down here, you see those little insects flying around over the top of the water. And if you were to look deeper into the water and you see kind of rocks and some silt, if we went deeper out over there, you see some underwater vegetation in the slightly deeper water. And all of that vegetation is serving as a home for the larvae of those insects. It serves as a home for entirely aquatic insects that never come up out and fly around on top of the water. And it serves as a home for baby fish. So that underwater vegetation is extremely important as a place for the baby fish to live and as a place for the insects that are using that as a place for their larvae to live. Because all of those insect larvae are going to grow up to become adult insects that become part of the ecosystem just around us in general. All of those baby fish are going to grow up to be bigger fish, some of whom will end up swimming downstream, down the bay, and living in the bay itself. So it's really important to keep that aquatic vegetation really healthy so that it can remain a nursery for those baby insects and the baby fish. So how do we keep it healthy? What we want to do is have the right balance of nutrients. We want to have enough nutrients in the water to feed the vegetation so that we can have our basis of our ecosystem there. But we don't want to have too much. And you might think, well, why not? What would be the problem in having more nutrients? And the problem is a big word called eutrophication, which just means having too many nutrients in the water. And the way that happens is that a lot of times, a lot of people will use, say, fertilizer on their lawns or various household chemicals that contain something called phosphate. And phosphate is something that really helps plants to grow. And that's why they put it in fertilizer. And it's, you want your flowers to grow, so people put fertilizer on their flowers. But that comes washing off. It ends up in the water here. And rather than feeding the aquatic vegetation, what it does is it feeds algae that grows in the water column itself. So you have algae growing all up through the water, on the surface of the water. Some of it can be quite thick, and it acts almost like an umbrella, and it shades out the sun so that the sun can't get down to the plants on the bottom. And remember, the plants on the bottom are the nursery, the place where the baby fish lives, the place where the baby insects live. And those things are what serve as food for the bigger fish and the rest of the ecosystem here. So when all those chemicals come flooding into the water, it is essentially killing the underwater vegetation and then killing the baby plants or the baby insects and the baby fish in addition to that. So we don't want to have too much. So household chemicals are a big culprit there for that. Industrial chemicals obviously also are a big culprit for adding too many nutrients to the water. Just runoff. So if you look around us, you'll see a lot of trees here. This is a good situation to have because these trees can absorb a lot of runoff coming off of the yards behind us that could be using fertilizer. So instead of fertilizing the algae and the water, that fertilizer would be absorbed by these trees, all these bushes. There's a lot of thorn bushes back here, which are growing really well. But they're helping in a way, even though nobody really likes the thorn bush that much, they're helping to prevent too much nutrients from going into the water. And that's important because if you remember, I said earlier, this creek is going to go eventually into the bay. And there's hundreds and hundreds of these creeks just like this one that all go into the bay. So if they're all nice and clean, if they all have nice healthy ecosystems, then the bay will too.